I have worked in kitchens my whole life, my mother's kitchen first, then a hotel on the coast, then 22 years in the canteen of a shipping depot, where the men ate the same 4 things every day and called me love without ever learning my name. After my husband Reg passed, I answered an advertisement in the Resettlement Bureau's weekly circular, cook and domestic support staff, Kelvari diplomatic residence, Sector 9, full board, reasonable hours, cultural orientation provided on arrival. I was 61 years old. My knees ached in the cold. I took the job because the pay was fair, and because I had nothing particular keeping me elsewhere. That is all there was to it. I want to be clear about that from the start. The Kelvari are tall, pale-skinned people, the silver white of birch bark, with eyes that shift color when they feel something strongly. In repose, the eyes are a calm pewter gray. When they are pleased, copper. When they are frightened, a deep and vivid blue that I always thought was beautiful, though I learned quickly not to say so. The residence had 3 staff before me, 2 human protocol officers and a young Kelvari chamberlain named Sorvath, who wore his rank sash with the care of a man who believed rank sashes mattered. He met me at the transport bay on my first morning, looked at my bag and my coat and my sensible shoes, and gave me the kind of smile people give when they have adjusted their expectations downward. "The residential kitchen is well equipped," he said. "You will find the prince's dietary requirements on the panel. He is fed twice daily. He does not require company." "Right," I said. "He may shout." "My husband shouted during his last illness," I said. "I stayed then too." Sorva's eyes went the faintest copper at the edges. He chose not to comment. I had read the brief during transit. I knew something of what had happened to Prince Selvek. The Kelvari go through what they call a turning, a biological and cognitive shift in early adulthood, something between a second puberty and a complete reorganization of the self. In most young Kelvari, turning passes in a few weeks. Selvek's had gone wrong, 8 months now. He had been, the brief used the word volatile, which I suspected was diplomatic. And 5 attendants had left, one formally requesting reassignment on medical grounds. The court had quietly moved him to the east wing of the residence. They brought him meals on a trolley and left them outside the door. They did not go in. The court's position, as Sorvath explained it to me on my second day, was that the prince required careful management and distance. "His episodes are not predictable," Sorvath said. "The recommendation is that staff maintain the outer corridor protocol, which means leaving the trolley at the door." "Correct. And has that been helping him?" Sorvath's eyes did not go copper this time. He said, "It has been the established protocol for 4 months." I thought about that for a moment. "I'll take the tray in myself," I said. His expression went very still. "That is not. I'm the cook," I said. "It's my kitchen. I'll take in what comes from my kitchen." He was sitting on the floor when I came in. Not collapsed, just sitting, the way a person sits when a chair has stopped making sense. He was very tall, even folded up like that, his legs at odd angles, his silver white hair loose around his face. He looked at me the way people look when they have been alone long enough that another person's presence feels like a physical intrusion, like light in a room that has been dark. "You're not Sorvath," he said. His voice was low and rougher than I expected. The brief had described him as 23 in human equivalent years, but he looked in that moment considerably older. "No," I said. "I'm Dora. I'm the new cook." I set the tray on the low table near the window, potato broth with dried herb, same as I used to make Reg on his difficult days. Plain and hot and easy. And I stepped back and sat down in the chair by the wall without being invited. "You don't have to eat it," I said, "but it'll go cold." He looked at the tray, he looked at me. His eyes were very blue. "They told you to wait outside," he said. "They told me a lot of things," I said. He was quiet for a long time. I didn't fill the silence. I've never seen the point of filling a silence that isn't asking to be filled. After a while he reached over and picked up the spoon. The episodes, when they came, were not subtle. The first one I witnessed, his fist through the interior wall panel, hard enough to split the casing. He was shouting, not at me, not at anything in the room, at something inside himself that had no name and no address. His eyes went fully blazingly blue. I sat where I was. When it passed 10 minutes, perhaps, he was on his knees on the floor, shaking, and the look on his face was the look I know well, the look of a person who has just frightened themselves. That look is worse than the anger. It's the look that makes people run, because there is no good thing to say to it, and it asks nothing of you except to stay, which is harder than it sounds. I got up, went to the kitchen cart, poured a glass of cold water, and brought it to him. He took it without looking at me. He drank. "I could have hurt you," he said. "You didn't," I said. "The others." "I'm not the others," I said. "Drink the rest of it. You'll have a headache." 3 weeks passed like that. I came twice a day. Sometimes he ate and sometimes he didn't. Sometimes we sat in silence for an hour and sometimes he talked. About Kelvari custom. About what the turning was supposed to feel like versus what it felt like for him. About how the court had begun to look at him the way people look at a beautiful thing they have decided is ruined. He was very precise about that last part. The Kelvari have a word for it. I can't reproduce the sound exactly. That means, roughly, grief of watching something lose its form. He said the court used it now when they spoke of him. Not cruelly, just accurately. That was what made it worse. I told him about Reg, about the last 2 years of his illness, when he had not always been himself, when he had said sharp things and broken small objects and wept without knowing why, and how I had stayed not because I was saintly, but because he was still Reg underneath all of it, and I could see Reg, and none of the rest of it changed that. Selvek was quiet after that for a long time. "You stayed," he said. "I stayed," I said. "Even when it was hard, especially when it was hard," I said. "That's when staying counts." I didn't know Surfath had been watching. On the 22nd day, I was clearing the morning tray and saying something ordinary about how I was going to try a barley dish that afternoon if he was interested. And Selvek caught my wrist gently as I turned for the door. "Don't go," he said. Not the way a person says it when they are frightened or desperate, making a demand, just quietly. The way you say a thing when you mean it plainly. I looked at him. His eyes were copper. I set the tray back down and sat in my chair. It was 2 hours before I left, and we talked about nothing in particular. A Kelvari game he had liked as a child. The right amount of salt in broth. The way light came through the east-facing windows in the afternoon. Just 2 people sitting in a room that had stopped being frightening. I found out later. From Sorvath, who told me in the particular stiff way of a person delivering information that has cost them something, that 4 members of the residence court had been standing in the corridor during those 2 hours. I was watching through the observation panel, saying nothing. He told me that the court had formally logged my position as sole designated companion to the Prince of the Kelvari residence, the highest household, station in their protocol, that it carried certain honors I should be made aware of. I thanked him. I asked him to tell me what those honors were, and he told me, and I listened carefully. Then I went back to my kitchen to start on the barley dish. Selvek's turning resolved, in the end, not for months later. He told me the morning it passed, stood in the kitchen doorway before breakfast, his eyes steady gray, and said, "Think it's done." He looked lighter, younger than he had ever looked. "Good," I said. "Sit down." "Eggs are almost ready." He sat down. "I don't think that is a remarkable story. I'm a cook. I made broth when someone needed it, and I sat in a chair when it seemed like the useful thing to do. And I didn't leave when the window for leaving presented itself, because I have never found it easy to leave someone to eat alone in a dark room. That is not heroism. That is just how I was raised. But I'll tell you this, and it's the only part of it I think about. Late evenings, when the kitchen is clean and the residence is quiet, whisper, "Don't go." And I'm glad I stayed.